Hi everybody, thank you for joining me on my channel. So within the payment systems of majority of the central banks globally adopting the ISO 222, the financial community has decided to move to a new standard in both domestic and cross-border payments as well as cash management reporting. In saying that, the adoption of the ISO 222 applies only to payment instructions and cash management reporting messages exchanged bilaterally between financial institutions. Now, the ISO 222 is a massive change across the financial community across the world, and this could actually be quite overwhelming for a lot of people that are actually involved both directly and indirectly. However, this channel will give us the basic information as well as the knowledge for us to understand, conceptualize, and actually execute in our business area. If you like the content of the video, please feel free to subscribe, like the video. Please put in your questions so we can come back to you because we'll be covering a host of topics under this channel. Some of the topics we will cover in the future is the different types of Pacs messages, CAMP messages, pain messages, your transaction management portal, translation rules, a bit of domestic regulatory requirements from BOP reporting to FATF requirements as well as IFAC reporting, etc. So we'll cover a host of different topics so that all of us have a common understanding of what this ISO 222 means and how does it affect us in our daily life. Now, today's session, we're going to go over our ISO, from our ISO 222 standard, we're going to go over the Pacs.008. Now, for the last kind of 44 years, we were very much accustomed to seeing and receiving an MT103, which is one of the most common messages that we could receive across any financial institution, both domestically and globally. Now, with the ISO standards, the MT103 has now been changed into a Pacs.008 message, so which is technically the equivalent of an MT103. Now, we will also go in the later on into a next video where we'll speak about a Pacs.008 STP, but for the purpose of this session, we're just going to speak about the Pacs.008, which I've mentioned is an equivalent to the MT103. Okay, you would see that some of the other messages on this particular slide, like for example the Pacs.009, the CAMP 056, your Pacs.009 Cov, we will go through all of this in much details going forward. Just to move on, your Pacs.008 is your FI to FI customer credit transfer. It's broken up into two elements, one being the group header, the other being the credit transfer transaction information. We would refer to the group header and the credit transaction information as elements, and within these elements there are sub elements, which some are mandatory and some are actually optional. Now, some of you guys watching would have different domestic requirements depending on where you are actually residing or your bank is residing. So some of your African banks will have, for example, SADC, RTGS regulatory requirements, and some of your European countries would have their own domestic requirements that actually will be set from a standard perspective from your central bank. So taking you back, the group header and the credit transaction information is elements within the Pacs.008. Now, we have a high-level serial message flow. Some banks, from what I understand, they also use the cover scenario, okay? But from a serial flow, you would see in this diagram, we have a customer that actually went to the bank, or the bank is actually sending us instruction on behalf of a customer from bank A to bank D. You would see a Pacs.008 equivalent to an MT103 passing between bank 1, between bank A to bank B to C, C to D, and finally to the beneficiary. Now the Pacs.008, you would see every time a Pacs.008 is sent on, the reply message will be a Pacs.002. Some people still refer to the Pacs.002 as an ACK or NAC, but we will cover the Pacs.002 in further videos on this channel as well. So the Pacs.002 is basically kind of a confirmation message, which actually tells you, yes, I'm accepting the MT103, or in this case the Pacs.008, and or they could actually send you a reject. But we will touch on the Pacs.008 in much detail on the next video, where we'll show you the different types of scenarios whereby we could have, for example, a cancellation messages with a Pacs.004. Okay, so a high level scenario would be we would receive the Pacs.008 and each of the banks will send us an acknowledgement back, in this case being the Pacs.002. Okay, on slide 5. So this actually shows us or refers to the Pacs.008 data elements, which needs to be considered as priority. As mentioned previously, we need to take cognizance of from a Pacs.008 CBPR data elements, which is kind of mandatory, as well as your domestic regulation, which is actually will be published with those data elements. So there has to be some sort of delta analysis done between both of these elements. The reason I'm saying that is that if you are unsure about which elements are mandatory and optional between your CBPR plus as well as your current domestic regulations, you're going to have a whole lot of problems going forward in terms of STP, customer queries, payments not credited, and failure in terms of kind of sending this Pacs.008 to other instructing banks. So the Pacs.008 data elements, the first one I'm going to go through is your end-to-end identification. This is an end-to-end reference provided by the debtor, which must be passed unchanged throughout the payment and reported to the creditor. A key note that if the debtor has not provided an end-to-end identifier, the debtor agent may populate not provided to comply with the mandatory need of this element. With regards to your transaction identification, this field is very similar to your field 2021 reference number, which you guys are currently accustomed to on your MT103. Then we have a UETR, which is a unique end-to-end transaction reference created using a specific standard. The reference must be passed unchanged throughout the payment. It may also be created by the debtor within their payment initiation request and also included in reporting message. UETR is also a very important element for GPI track and trace, as well as GSRP, which is your global stop and recall. Moving on to your next element, which is a previous instructing agent 1, 2, and 3. The previous instructing agent, this element identifies the agent immediately prior to the instructing agent. This element is a static role which allows additional previous instructing agents to append the history of this particular payment. The ultimate debtor data field. This element is defined as the ultimate party that owes an amount of money to the ultimate creditor. So under your ultimate debtor, you would also have a whole list of other sub-elements which are actually optional. For example, name, postal address, department, sub-department, street names, etc. Okay. Then we have the debtor's information, as well as your debtor's account information. Okay, so the debtor's account is used to capture the account information for which the debit entry is or has been applied to the debtor's account in this particular underlying transaction. Then we have, moving on to the creditor information. So the creditor element, this basically describes the party credited for the transaction or the party to be credited for the amount that's actually due. Then we have the creditor account. This is an identification of an account of the creditor to which the credit entry will be posted as a result of the payment transaction. So under your credit account, you will have other identification, your IBAN number, and other applicable details to this. Okay. Then we have our ultimate creditor. An ultimate creditor is the element to which the ultimate party to which the amount is due. An ultimate creditor has no financial regulated direct account relationship with the corresponding creditor. And if no account is involved, then there should be no viable elements in your payments engine to actually validate this for STP processes, etc. Then our last data field we have is our remittance information. So your remittance information, this is more of a nested element which provides us with matching reconciliation for an entry of the payment that's kind of intended to be settled. So this element just gives us the whole remittance information about what is structured, unstructured, the reference documents, invoicing, tax remittance, and all that stuff. So that's just an overall a matching criteria. It becomes very important in your camp messages going forward. For more detailed information about data elements, please click or log on to your Swift portal, click onto My Standards, click onto your CBPR Plus portal, and you would see the data elements for the Pacs.008 for the Pacs.008. As mentioned before, under each element there are sub-elements which are mandatory and optional, but this actually is the main data element that needs to be provided when we're actually sending and receiving a Pacs.008. So going forward in your business, you would ensure that you have the ability to send these elements as well as the ability to receive these elements to ensure that you're able to process a transaction on behalf of a client or a bank in this instance. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you guys a good perspective of what Pacs.008 is all about. And please click on the subscribe button on the channel to keep up with our daily content and all the other information that we'll be broadcasting.